Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Hanneke, and this is my podcast, and this is already the fifth episode. So I've interviewed four great Flosstubers. We all love them. And today I am very, very honored to introduce to you, well, it doesn't need an introduction really, but I'm talking to Jacob from Modern Folk Embroidery. We all love Modern Folk Embroidery. We're all stitching something from it. So it's absolutely lovely to speak to Jacob today. This is Editing Hanneke here. I am trying to sort out this interview that I did with Jacob, which was fantastic. But my very cheap microphone and his very, very good microphone don't seem to line up perfectly. So mine is very loud and his is very soft. So this might be an interview where you have to move about a little bit with your volume button. I've tried to fix it, but I'm not very good at that. And I also think that Zoom sort of sends me one file with everything in it. So it has one audio file for both his microphone and my microphone. So if I change anything, it changes for both of us. So that's a bit of a challenge to fix. Also, you will see here and there that the audio doesn't match up perfectly with the video. So for some reason, there is a slight delay. And I cannot fix that either. I think Zoom was troubling us the whole time. It threw us out a few times, so I think it wasn't doing its best. But I can't fix them, so I'm really sorry if that annoys you, and I hope you will enjoy the interview even despite all of those issues. Thank you. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Hanneke, for having me. It's really nice. Excited to have a chat with you.
Well, that's great. And let's just go straight into it, as I always do. So just tell us a bit about yourself. And people know bits and bobs about you, but just tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get into stitching and then even into designing?
Yeah, so my name is Jacob de Graaf, and about 15 years ago, I started Modern Folk Embroidery as a small business. But before that, I did fine arts in college, and I got a degree in that. And I always had a fascination for textiles and textile history and these things. And when I had a little art gallery after my graduation, I started painting and displaying my own art in the little gallery. But I noticed that my fingers started itching again to do actual stitching again, which I had done as a kid, but sort of had abandoned after college. And I got really fascinated by the paintings of Hans Holbein, the beautiful embroideries that you see, the blackwork embroideries on the colors and stuff. And of course, the Holbein stitch is literally named after the painter who immortalized them. So I started working on just bits of linen and just cotton, whatever I could see, and I had really good eyes back then as well, so I could still do the finest stitching just without any glasses. And that was fascinating to me. And then after a while, I sort of did some other stuff, did some other textile stuff as well, moved to the UK, and then on a visit back to the Netherlands, I saw my mum, and she had made a little cushion, and she had stitched it up. And there was a piece of cross stitch, like a vintage cross stitch piece that she had found in a shop, and she really liked it. So she'd made a patchwork piece with the cross stitch folklore motif in the middle. And I loved it. So I thought like, oh, I want to stitch that myself. So I thought like, oh, well, this is a bit tricky to stitch it directly from the thing. So I set about making my own pattern and I had no software, so I had to make my own graph paper in Flash, Adobe Flash. That's what I used in the beginning. And I made the chart and I started stitching it. But then I found that the making of the chart was so much fun. I started making my own patterns. And then a friend of mine said like, you should sell these on Etsy, and I had some experience on Etsy already. So I thought like, this might be a fun idea actually, selling email patterns. So a customer would buy something and I would send them an email, because in the early days you had to literally physically send someone the email. And it was really, really cool. And that's how I basically started sort of making my own stuff. And when I started as well, what I wanted to stitch wasn't really there. I wanted to do
Mhm.
very sort of folklore things, but at that time I wasn't interested in reproduction stuff. Now I am, but back then I
Mm.
wasn't. I didn't want to literally copy what was already there. I wanted to make my own stuff. And yeah, that's how Modern Folk pretty much came about.
Yeah,
And here we are about 15, 16 years later, and I'm doing this full time, or I'm allowed to do this full time, which is just, yeah,
that's
just amazing.
amazing.
It's really, really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
So you said you were in art college.
Yeah.
So would you say that you've always been artsy, or did you always want to just be working with art? People in an art gallery don't
Mm,
necessarily make their own art. So did you always want to make your own art, or did you want to be
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, no, I grew up in a family basically of makers. People were either making music, being creative. My mum, she is a very talented artist herself. She paints, she makes beautiful paintings, but she
Right.
started her career as a maker of dolls and doing lots of textile crafts and things. So I grew up with a ton of craft materials, and especially sort of like fabric craft things. So
Yeah.
I was always hanging around with piles of fabrics and other stuff around me, sewing machines, embroidery stuff. So for me, that wasn't like an alien world at all. It was something that I had direct access to, and my mum thankfully just let me just play. I had an interest in it, and she wasn't like, "Oh, that's weird that a boy wants to do that," because I know I've heard from some guys that parents weren't that sort of encouraging
Mm.
for their boys to do that. My mom was like, "No,
Yeah.
whatever you want to do. If you want to do carpentry, go for it. You know, like go in the woodshed, use that stuff because my dad did some carpentry stuff. If you want to use the sewing machine, here is how it works. You know, like so it was
Yeah.
like there was
Very
a big
supportive.
encouragement to just explore creativity
Mm.
and just do what you like doing.
Yeah.
So that was really cool, and I think it was really that encouragement that really helped, develop me as a kid. And then when I went to school, I had a talent for drawing and art stuff. And then my art teacher said to me, like, I think you should go to art school because you'd be really good at that. And I really, really loved it, but I wasn't quite in love with the world of art itself, the art
Mm.
industry, so to speak. So I kind of
Yeah.
fell out of love a little bit with it. But I love art. I mean, I'm a huge. I love going to galleries and see other contemporary artists and artists from the past and museums and all of that stuff. But I don't necessarily feel the need to be a part of that world
Mm.
anymore. I still paint. I still do stuff like that as well
Yeah.
when I get the time. Uh, but yeah, it's quite cool how you sort of just roll into that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so do you, because I know you from cross stitch patterns, do you always also do other textile embroidery type of work?
The thing is that I would love to do way more stuff, but because I try and model stitch my own stuff as well, I don't have model stitches. So if you see something stitched that I'm promoting myself, unless it is literally said stitched by so and so, but you can assume that I have been stitching the thing. So
Yeah.
that takes a lot of, of my time.
Yeah.
Uh,
And what is your reason to want to do it yourself?
um, I am a weird control freak, but I'm also someone who works in a way that I like to keep the things myself because that's why I got into the game. So I basically, I've always said I design for myself alone. And if other people like that, that's awesome. But I have never sat down and thought like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna make this pattern and people will love that. I don't like it, but I don't care. Other people will like it. That is not a way that I like to design. I would never do that. And I think that that goes for most designers probably. I think most designers will just want to make the thing that they want to make. But for me,
Yeah.
it's also something like I want to make what I want to stitch. So if I can stitch it, that's an
Yeah.
extra added bonus. And I can't stitch everything. I really wish I could stitch everything.
Right.
But there's lots of stuff that I want to do. I've got recently last year, I bought a loom, which is still standing in the basement downstairs. It's sort of like ready to be, threads
Yeah.
being put on and everything. And I have some nice threads as well that I purchased, but I haven't had the time yet to sort of dive into that whole world of weaving but there's lots of textile things and other forms of embroidery as well. I've done other forms of embroidery in the past, and I am actually looking into doing some other techniques as well. So
Ah,
still in the
right.
counted stitching world, but doing a
Yeah.
little bit more of maybe something with satin stitches, back stitches, eyelets, and all of these types of things.
Yeah.
Um, sort of just adding a few new things to the designs
Yeah.
and especially to my own designs, because my own designs have pretty much, I think, universally been full cross stitch only. And then the
Yeah.
reproduction samplers, they will have sometimes some other stitches in them because it's a reproduction, so you have to try and get it as close to the original thing as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never really used other stitches except for a new one, which I'm very excited about, which has eyelets and backstitch and
Ah,
cross
right.
stitch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
think the reason that it is just cross stitch, and this is what some people have said on floss tubes, they are very intricate patterns, but they're quite easy to stitch. So they're very meditative to work on, and they're very uh, there's not a high threshold to get started on them really
yeah.
because it is just cross stitch.
I
So
think
there is something to say for that.
yeah, I love that, and that's what I love about monochrome patterns as well. That when you have a
Mm,
pattern, that you don't have to sort of stare to death on the page, like, oh, what symbol is this? And it's like, oh God, I've got the little
yeah,
symbol wrong, and now I need to unpick it because I've got the wrong color. Here it is literally like, you want to stitch it in one color, great. You want to use
yeah,
50 colors, that's fine as well. There is
yeah.
literally no wrong way with stitching
No,
my patterns. It's how you want to do it, and but there is something really what you were saying meditative about stitching monochrome, which I find really relaxing. So it's
mm,
like I sometimes do it full time, and then it's a little less relaxing, especially when I have a deadline and I really want to try and
yeah,
finish it. And I
I
literally
get
sit
that.
from 6 o'clock in the morning till like 1 o'clock at night. I have been stitching, which is very bad, and I shouldn't be doing that. But sometimes you just have that urge to just finish that piece, and then you really want to, yeah.
And how is that for you physically? Because I love stitch. I could stitch all day if,
Yeah.
if I had the time, but it's not good for because my muscles will strain and stuff like that. Does that right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I can feel I've been, so I have a Patreon page, which is really exciting. I
Mm,
started this, was it late last year, I think, early this year. It's been about 6 months now that I've been running this, and I'm just really excited about that because I started it as an experiment thing. I thought like, I want to offer something to people where I engage with them a little bit more.
mm,
Like not just sort of via, I hate social media things. I really don't enjoy doing the Facebook.
mm,
I'm just steering clear from Facebook nearly completely. Instagram, I like better because it's such an image driven thing.
mm.
But then I really hate the algorithm of Instagram where just everything disappears immediately as soon as you post something. So it's
Yeah,
literally hit and miss if people will see your stuff.
yeah,
But I don't like the engagement with Instagram because it is a very weird way of talking to people, and you so quickly miss messages that people send to you, and I
you
feel
do.
really awful because I know people have written to me and I haven't gotten back to them because that message just disappears, and then I don't know which post it was
Hmm.
on the, and especially if you're like looking at something on the go and then you get your phone back again and then like it's just disappeared in lots of messages. So
Yeah,
I wanted to have a place where people could be more direct with me, chat with me, and I could show stuff more directly as well. But I could also show more the creative process. So, like when I plan something or when I make something and it's not yet finished, that sort of
yeah,
that way of being uh, a little bit more like a group of friends that you sort of just have a little
yeah,
banter with, and you can be yourself a little bit more, and you don't have to
yeah,
have this polished facade of social media. And that's what I just love about doing the Patreon thing. And Touchwood, I'm really blessed with a really big group of people that have joined and are still joining, which is just awesome. But so the new project that I've started was my stitch along for 2026. because I was thinking like, okay, I have to start thinking of that one because we're already halfway the year, and it always takes quite
Yes.
a bit to plan it, to make the booklet and get everything
Mm.
ready. And then when you start on January 1st, you want to give people the time as well. Like lots of stitches don't have the privilege of just walking up or driving up to a local needle workshop. People
Mm.
have to order stuff
True.
online. It takes sometimes months for
Yeah.
that stuff to get there. So usually I try and do it at least 3 months before the start, that people know what they should be getting.
Yeah.
Uh, so I thought like this year I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to ask my Patreon people 3 questions. So I said like, what techniques would you like to see for the stitch along? So I gave them the option of cross stitch only, cross stitch and back stitch, cross stitch, back stitch, and some eyelets, or French knots only. Surprisingly, they didn't want only French knots. I was like very, very surprised by that. But
I'm very
so
happy about that.
yeah, me too, to be honest with you. Uh, so the pattern has backstitch, eyelets, and cross stitch. So it's and it is not a ton of back stitches or eyelets. It's just little flourishes here and there to just give it a
Yeah.
little bit extra flavor. And then the second question was, what should the technique be, or the style be? Baroque like this year's, or should it be like a folklore pattern, or should it be more like a traditional sampler pattern? And folks wanted folklore for 2026,
Right.
so it became a folklore pattern with those stitches. And then the last one was the theme. Do you want mythology, fairy tales, or nature? And literally half of the people who voted said we want something with nature. So, and I was already like, ideas were immediately bubbling, and I've never designed something so quickly. But that was also probably because I had asked some questions, and I felt like, okay, if it goes in this direction, I want to go there. If this is the theme, I want to go there. So
Yeah.
those ideas I still might use for something else,
Yeah.
but it quite quickly became apparent that nature was going to be the winning thing. So I started in my head already, planning.
So how does that, can you just talk us through how that works? So you're sort of imagining something probably in your head.
Yeah,
And do you then go straight to software and you start clicking the squares basically? And is that the process, or
it
do you
depends.
work on pen and paper?
No, I don't really work on with pen and paper. Sometimes I do, but it depends on how much of the thing is in my head already. Sometimes I see it really clearly, and then I just need to quickly start up the computer, start my software, and start clicking like a madman to get it in there. And then even then, the pattern changes. Lao Tzu said this beautiful thing that about the journey is basically more important than the destinations that you arrive at.
Yeah,
I think he said a good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent on arriving. And I think
I
that's
love
sort of
that.
my design aesthetic as well, that I might have a really fixed idea of what I want to do, but sometimes something happens along the road, and that's
Yeah.
that's good. Like you
Mm.
can't plan it to death, because I think that actually makes it come alive as well. That
Yeah.
unexpected thing, embrace that in your work. But it is pretty much directly into the software, and then the booklet is made, because I find that the most direct way. But for other designs as well, I do a lot of research. So for the stitch along, I wanted to have it around a theme. So I had a theme in my head, and I wanted to have a saying with it. So I started looking at old volumes of poetry, and I couldn't quite find what I wanted. And then I started going to search engines to just sort of find some things that I thought like, okay, maybe
Yeah.
this will give me something.
Hmm.
And I found an 18th century United States paper. I forgot the name of it. I've written it down. And it was amazing. It was a really cool publication that was very on the forefront of the abolition movement as well. So it was a really nice, good paper, which was awesome. And there was a poem by a gentleman who had written this thing from the perspective of a 7-year-old boy. And it was very innocent, very sweet, but there was 4 lines in it that was just like, wow, this is exactly what I want to say in my pattern. So I used those lines on the
Oh,
new
that's
stitch
lovely.
along.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is really nice, and I'm about 30% stitching it now. I started last week. I started stitching it when was it? Monday, I think. Yeah, last week Monday, and I've been stitching
Yeah.
non-stop to sort of
Yeah.
work on it. But it is exciting because I made some changes while stitching as well. There was like
Mm.
an idea that I had for a centerpiece. I'm not going to spoil that yet. People can actually see those things on my Patreon. That's where I share
Nice.
things as a
Yeah.
little bonus thing. But it was really cool because I had this idea, and then while I was stitching it, I thought like, oh, that's actually really interesting as well. Something I had seen like a week before when I was in this garden. And I thought like that would be really nice as well. And that fits in with the theme. So I changed the design while I was already stitching it, and
And that
it's
makes it worth doing your own model stitching because then it adds
absolutely.
to the pattern in the end.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's what I really like as well about doing my own model stitching, that I can just
Yeah.
do it in such a way. And also sometimes I make a mistake in my model and then I just change the graph. Because if it's a
Yeah.
folklore pattern and I have made like a big woo-woo, I'm not going to unpick like a whole thing, because it like when you do something, for instance, this pattern here, when you do something and
Beautiful.
I would, for instance, have that central star motif, one cross too high or too low than I originally intended it to be. Unless it looks really, really terrible, of course. But then I might just say, like, you know what, this is not a disaster. I'm gonna change it, or I'm gonna keep stitching it and I make it up along as I go if the pattern has
Yeah.
already been released.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't get stressed about it. And I think someone who would be model stitching would be thinking, oh God, I have to unpick like
Yeah.
5,000
Definitely.
crosses now because this
Yeah.
is a proper model stitch, isn't it? And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah,
I'll just change it. Whatever.
exactly.
So how long does it take? I love the one with the clock. I think it was a sale from last year.
Oh,
How
that's
long
this
does
one.
it take to make that one? To design that one?
So that's this one.
That's
Um,
from this year, and
this is, oh,
I
sorry, the
love that
clock
one
one.
too, by the
Yes,
way.
I
Yeah,
haven't
I love
stitched that
both,
one.
to be honest.
I haven't stitched that one.
You haven't
Um,
stitched it.
no, I haven't. I was going to start it, and I started it in January, and I was going to start along with everyone else. And then I was really quickly, like in the first week of January, I had done the January portion already. It was really fast. And then I forgot what happened. Was it the Salentine's pattern? No, that was already done as well. That was already before that. Something else happened. I was doing something with Caroline in Canada from Evertoad, who I do a lot of
Yeah,
collaborations with.
yeah.
And I had to do that. And then another thing happened. And then I had a workshop somewhere, and like work just piled up.
This,
And before I knew it, was
yeah.
like, okay, I actually don't have time to work on this. And I was really sad about that.
Mm,
But I managed to do this one because I stitched this one
that's a
up
beautiful one.
I think because I launched this when I went to Big Stitch in the UK in 2024.
Yeah.
And um, I wasn't going to release it that early at all. The
Mm,
plan was like, like it's going to be sort of October that this will find a release again.
yeah.
But then I released it in sort of June, July, I think, because I wanted to have people the chance to see it actually, because I was stitching it. And I thought like it's so fun that people actually can see the model stitch and then they can take it
Yeah.
with them as well. But yeah, this one was inspired by a Franco-Dutch architect
Right.
who lived in Den Haag, among other places, and who was a architect for the king at the time as well. Or yeah, he wasn't the king; he was the stadhouder, of course, in at that time,
Right.
because it's pre
Yeah.
the House of Orange as
Yeah.
kings and all of that.
As royal
But
family. Yeah.
it is really yeah, it is a really cool sort of joined up thing of different motifs that he designed in pattern books. And sort of I use it as sort of like a playful thing. So I took these birds from one thing, I took this from one thing, I took that from one thing, and then sort of translated it into something that could have been an antique, basically
So because
tapestry.
I love this one, and I have to say, seeing it in person makes it even better, doesn't it? It's even better like this. So where did you start with the design? Did you start in the middle with the flower pot, or did you start with the bird? Where did it all start?
With the stitching, you mean when I stitched it up, or does the
With the
design?
designing. with the
The design
designing.
was basically I wanted to create something a little bit different. Normally, I do much more folklore things, like this style, sort of more geometric things, much more
Yeah,
strict and folklore style. This is much more
yeah,
like Baroque style
yeah.
ornamentation, Rococo. And I was looking at the website of the Rijksmuseum, which is infinitely inspiring, and I was actually
Mm.
looking for something completely different, not related to the stitch along at all. And I came across the graphic works of this architect, and the museum has this beautiful volume of drawings by this architect. And I was like, wow, that would make a nice pattern. And then I saw something else, and I was like, wow, that would make a nice pattern as well. And then I sort of looked him up. His name is actually Daniel Marot. And so I started looking at that, what this man had actually made. And then I thought, like, I could actually use little elements from all these different drawings that he has made and make like a new monster thing, like my own sort of Frankenstein version of the designs that this man has
Yeah,
made. And that turned out to be this pattern in the end. So yeah, and then it's just basically this was from something that he made. This particular thing was from something as well. This big urn with all those the
yeah.
huge cornucopias
Beautiful.
here. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, that was, and of course the baldaquin at the top here was from a pattern. So they were all sort of elements that he had drawn, and then I had to translate them into cross stitch, which
yeah,
is also something that's quite tricky because it's so
yeah,
flowing, and you don't want to make something that would have been easier if this was a giant pattern, because then you can
yeah.
just sort of make
Mm.
it as complex as you like. But because
Yeah.
it's this is not small, but for something
A piece
this
like that. Yeah,
sort
for
of
a piece like
like
that is. Yeah,
because I'll bring it to the a bit closer to the camera so you can see a little bit more the details.
yeah, it's
Um,
stunning. So
then you can see
pretty.
that it's sort of like a pixel image as well. But I really I like that it's still flowing and it has that
Yeah.
baroque feel. And yeah, I love his drawing. So I thought like I want to do something with that this time.
It's beautiful, and it does bring out that artsy background of yours. So it translates something from an artist and put it together in a completely new piece of art and a new style as well.
I guess so. I guess that's why I love going to museums as well, because
Mm.
it brings all the inspiration from those fields of
Yeah,
art and design and things. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Did you bring any other pieces with you that we could have a look at?
I have a few other pieces. Yeah, I have. Well, you saw this one already. This is called Hearts and Hearts,
I like
which is a
it.
terrible pun, but I kind of like it as well because deer can also be called hearts, of course, and there's lots of little hearts on this pattern as well.
Yeah,
And this one was made and stitched during December when I have literally been so busy with everything else, and suddenly I decided to like I don't have enough work to do at the moment. Let's make my life a little bit more difficult. So that's why I made this one. But I really like it. I just thought it was such a fun folklore pattern.
yeah,
And this one spoke to me because it is really from that love of Scandinavian traditional sort of embroidery that this one is really sort of taking its inspiration. Um, that's one field that I find really inspiring. Anyway, folklore embroidery, especially the Nordic
yeah.
and the. I'm from Friesland myself, so in the north we have a really rich tradition in samplers, which is quite different from the samplers again in the rest of the Netherlands. So our samplers are a little bit more folklore-like and a little bit
Right.
messier as well with motives and things, while Dutch samplers are a little bit more formal. They're very beautiful and very pretty with how they sort of put the motives. But Frisian samples, for instance, are just sort of like, okay, we're just going to splash a whole row of alphabets here, and then we're going to do all these really ancient motives that we just sort of scattered around. Done,
Yeah,
and that's a Frisian sampler, and it's I like that sort of mishmash of all these patterns, and they're
yeah,
really old as well, and they kept being used, which is also something that's fascinating because I think the influx of ideas in Holland, especially, was so well established that there was more influences for new things. While in Friesland, even though Friesland was very rich and there was a huge influx of stuff coming from the sea, and because we had really important sea harbor towns, of course, along the
Yeah.
sea,
Yeah.
um, I think still people kept to their local traditions. Friesland, of course, had its own language, and I think the
Yeah.
local traditions really were very deeply rooted with the traditional costume that people were wearing until the 19th century.
Yeah.
Longer than anywhere else in the Netherlands, we kept those stitching traditions. So, and that's
Yeah.
something that's very unique in that region, I think. So that's for me something that really inspires as well. That sort of that local background and that bit of roots there. Yeah.
And the local clothing, because I'm from Groningen, which is next to Friesland, for people who
Oh,
don't
are you
know.
from Groningen?
I'm from Groningen, yes,
I was going to
Schilbolden.
ask you. Brilliant.
Yeah. And I went to a museum there, and she had all those klederdrachten, so
Yeah,
clothes that people wore in different areas of the Netherlands,
yeah,
and they had beautiful stitching on it as well. So some of the women would wear something cross-stitched in
yeah.
front here. Did you look at any of that, Elaine, before?
Yeah, I do actually, because I have some contacts with the Openluchtmuseum, the opening
Yes,
museum here
exactly.
in the
Yeah,
Netherlands, which is
yeah,
fantastic. But it is really cool because the north and the south, where you live, they have big similarities. And I think partly that is also because the Frisians were like 800, 900 years ago. They made up pretty much the whole of the Netherlands, like the bits that is current day Groningen, Friesland, all of Holland, Zeeland, a bit of the Belgian coast,
yeah,
and the whole north of Germany. That was all known as Frisia, or
yeah,
Frisia Major, they called it. And but that's all so long ago, so a lot of that culture has just vanished. But the cool thing
yeah.
is that in the local dialects of West Flemish, the Zeeland dialect, when people speak like the local dialect, and West Frisian in Holland, so much Frisian has slipped in their words that I
Ah,
actually
yeah,
understand it. I was speaking to a friend of from Belgium, our neighbor, and she was saying something in West Flanders, and it was exactly the same as it is in Frisian,
yeah,
but it doesn't
yeah,
look anything like Dutch. So that's really cool. Uh,
yeah.
but I think stitching traditions as well, because in Zeeland as well,
Mm,
there's a lot of traditions that have that
true.
different, but they have links with the northern provinces as well, which is
Yeah,
really quite fascinating. But the
yeah,
the embroidered pieces that they have are very from Zeeland as well. The beautiful cross stitch,
yeah.
like little
Samplers.
samplers that some women have.
Yeah.
But Groningen and Friesland have a very similar sampler style. When you look at the 18th century, the sampler designs are nearly identical and sometimes really
Right.
hard to tell apart from what is made in
Yeah.
Groningen or what is made in
Ah,
Friesland. There are little telltale signs that you can sometimes see. But I have a few in my collection where I'm not certain whether this sampler is either from Groningen or Friesland. I just don't know where it is from.
yeah.
In the 19th century, it becomes a little bit more clear where Groningen samplers tended to be very black and really beautiful black sort of monochrome samplers,
Right.
and the
Yeah.
Frisian ones were still colorful. But
Right. Yeah.
yeah, it's
That's the
cool.
difference.
It's actually a project I'm doing with Evertote in Canada, and that's starting on the 1st of August, which is really exciting. People
Right.
can join it from all over the world. Evertote was selling the kits with the materials and everything, but you can get the PDF from my website as well and just source your own materials. But
Yeah.
I had spoken with Caroline for a long time about doing a project of smalls. And we started that up a while ago again, and that's now all rounded off. So that's really exciting. So I'm going to start making my videos now.
Ah.
But the idea is it's called Quintessential Frisian Smalls. So we've got Friesland
Oh,
again.
love that. Yeah.
And the idea that it's quintessential because there's 5 patterns, and the wonderful Hannah came up with that very clever idea of calling it quintessential. So yeah, there's basically you get 5 mini projects and a whole bunch of extra projects you can do because there's lots of bonus patterns in there as well. But we're going to do every month one small project that is very doable. It's accessible to complete beginners as well, and we're looking at learning literally the basic stitches even. So I'm going to do a video how
Right.
to do the cross stitch, how to start a cross stitch, for instance.
Ah.
But especially the main thing is how to finish, because I think most people will already know how to do cross stitch and back stitch. But it's just nice I wanted to do something where literally someone who has never done something but is also tempted, like, I would love
Yeah.
to start doing something, also to be able to jump in. So there's 5 projects. This is the first one that's going to be stitched in January.
Oh,
And
that's
for every
lovely.
month, I took something from a Frisian sampler. So this one was from a sampler from 1749. And that's 2 peacocks on a little tree
It's
of
lovely.
life. And then I put my initials on the back. So you get all the alphabet, so you can do that as well. And then you learn how to finish these pieces as well. For the second month in September, this is from my oldest sampler, and this is a genuine small, but this is a scissor
Yeah.
fob, so that hangs on my pair of scissors like this.
Oh, that's so
And this is
cute.
from a sampler from 1681. It looks like 1891, but I think if I hold it
Six,
like this,
yeah,
you can see.
1681. Yeah.
So, and that's this one, which is a really fun little pattern. Then for the third month, we're going to do a Biscornu. Now, Biscornus are like all of these projects,
Oh, I
the
love
projects
that.
themselves are not Frisian because Frisian projects don't really exist. There is not such a thing as a typical Frisian project, unless you make like huge bed linen
Yeah.
things, but that's not really fun. But yeah, so these motifs here, which this looks like a Quaker pattern,
Beautiful. Very pretty.
and this is also all Frisian, which is really cool. So that's
I'm definitely gonna make that one. That one is completely up my street.
and then there is this one, which is project number 4, which looks like a Quaker pincushion. And
Oh,
I
that
made
is
it in such
pretty.
a way as well. This is from 1722, this pattern. But again, it's from Frisian samples from Hinderlopen, from the sea regions. And
That's
that has a lot of
beautiful.
little back stitching decoration and stuff, and
Yeah.
a border that I
I love
stitched.
that round uh,
It's lovely, isn't it?
on the
This is
side. Yeah, it's
a
beautiful.
pattern that they call the Esjes and Emmetjes, they call it in
Oh,
Marken and in Friesland as well, which is stands for Sancta Maria actually. And I think because it's funny because it's super Catholic, and in the north we're not really known for being Catholic. It's mainly Protestants up north.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think people who are at sea a lot, like fishermen and all of these folks, they tend to be very superstitious, and there's lots of superstitions about things that you have to do and when you go on board. And of course, it was a very dangerous life. So I think if you have a
Absolutely.
little, like a little thing that you can do to sort of come back safe to the family, then you would probably do that. And I think there was this sense, I guess, as well with these patterns and stuff that would sometimes be knit on sweaters as well. These little S
Yeah.
and M things for the Sancta Maria. If it doesn't harm, like we wouldn't worship the Virgin Mary, but like, hey, like a little Hail Mary, if it keeps us safe on the ship, like that's at least my thinking. Of course, I don't know, and I can't ask these people, but I think that's why the girls would stitch these on their samplers
Yeah.
as well, like a little,
Yeah.
survival
Yeah.
from those days, because you kind of only see them on Hinderlopen samples. You don't see, well, there is
Right.
some samples that you see them on, but it's a very Hinderlopen samples nearly have always got these motifs
Yeah.
on them.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and then the last one is also from a Hinderlopen sampler, and that's a strawberry, which I find really, of course, it spins really
Oh,
fast and
that's very
everything.
pretty too.
So you're going to learn how to make a tassel and how to basically make this slightly more complex three-dimensional thing. And this is from 1795, this motif from the
That would
sampler.
be very pretty on very beautiful drapes in curtains in front of your
Absolutely.
windows, and have those hanging on it. It would be
Hang
beautiful.
exactly, yeah. And this one was so much fun as well because I wanted to make a strawberry, but I didn't want to do the traditional strawberry.
No.
I wanted to have like a genuine strawberry shape,
Yeah.
and then do something with those patterns from Friesland. And I thought like, hey, this is a
Very
fun design.
pretty.
So yeah, you're going to learn how to make cord, how to make a tassel, and how to sew this whole thing up in the last one. And that's going to be in January, because in December we are skipping that 1 month. So it's going to be full 6 months skipping December
Yeah.
because we're doing the holiday countdown with Evertoad during that.
Yeah. Of
And
course
then
you are.
everyone will be
Yeah.
very busy with that one.
Yeah, and we're busy with Christmas stitching anyway. People do so many
Exactly.
different patterns then.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's going to be too much. We said like, okay, we're going to just take a break. People can do, if they want to join on that project, they can join on that one, or they can do their other stuff. And then in January, we're back for the last one. So
back on
I'm
track.
really excited about that one. And but you lived in the UK as well, didn't you? You did your
Yeah,
PhD, I think, in the UK, or
yeah, yeah. I
and
lived there for
where in the
7
UK did you
years,
live?
which is, sorry?
Where in the UK did you live?
I lived in Stratford-upon-Avon for most of it, which is near Warwick, near
Exactly.
Birmingham.
Yeah.
And then for the last year and a half, I think I lived in Bolton, which is near Manchester.
Yeah.
So very different as well
Up
in
north.
vibe, if you will.
Up north in
So
Bolton. Up
yeah,
north in Bolton.
yeah, exactly that. Yeah, very different accent. I had to get used to it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I loved Stratford-upon-Avon. That's Shakespeare was born there, so
Yeah,
it has a
exactly.
lot of tourists, and it's very pretty part of the UK. So I really loved living there. Yeah,
Beautiful. Yeah, because it's such a different countryside there. Because up north, it's much more sort of that industrial revolution,
yeah,
industrial part of England. Like
yeah,
it's really fascinating how rich the north was at one point. Yorkshire and West Yorkshire especially, and Manchester. They were huge powerhouses of Victorian Britain, and there was so much money in these towns, Bradford and stuff. And then when
yeah,
the mills closed, like a lot of these cities became very poor.
yeah,
So it became the opposite end because like I think a lot of
yeah,
people see the northern cities as a little bit poorer these days. But
yeah,
in the 19th century, they were really rich, and they have amazing art collections as well because all the rich industrialists, they
yeah,
were buying all of the arts. So
yeah.
Leeds has an amazing art gallery. Manchester Art Gallery is fantastic, has really beautiful. York has a really good one as well. Even though York was not an industrial city like the other ones, York was just a historical city.
Ah,
But yeah, that's what my stomping ground was for 15 years. I lived there, which is
right.
yeah, yeah. But yeah,
I wish
that's
at the
I
time I had more time to actually go around and do these kinds of things because at the time I was doing my PhD, I was way too
yeah,
busy to do anything else. But I wish I'd
exactly.
used the time a bit for things like this as well.
I would have loved to see more of the UK myself because I stayed mainly just in Yorkshire and some other stuff I saw, and we would go to London for museum stuff or whatever, like little
Yeah,
trips. Um, and Scotland I've been a bunch of times, but I'm just
Scotland's
really ashamed that
nice.
I have never been to Wales, for instance, which is just terrible. Like I've lived there for
Ah,
15 years and I've not been to Wales, which is just my biggest regret. I've been
when
to
I finished my
Cornwall.
PhD, I lived in Wales for 6 months and I can only recommend it.
Wow.
It's beautiful.
I can
Yeah, it's a
imagine. I
beautiful
can imagine
place.
what I've heard and seen, and from friends of mine who live there. It looks really really lovely. But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. One of
yeah,
my friends, Michelle, from Mama Loves You GB. You must
yeah,
know her as well. So she
I do.
lives in Wales. So that would be a nice one as well for you as a
I
recommendation.
I will send an email.
Definitely. So this one is now we're talking about the UK. This one is inspired by Jane Austen, and of course it's the 250th anniversary this year as well.
Yeah.
Um, and this one was inspired by Persuasion, and I wanted to do something that was not like a true historical recreation sampler, but like the main character could have stitched this in 1801.
Yeah, it's very pretty.
So I wanted to make something like that. So I saw it as her being 14 years old and stitching this sampler. And it uses a quote from the book actually, which she says, and then this is her ancestral home, Kellage Hall. And these are the initials of her father and of her mother who passed away.
Um,
And so I thought that would be a really fun thing. And of course,
yeah,
I've stitched her father and her mother standing on either side of
lovely.
the
That's a
house there.
very British hall. I love
It's
that.
it's the Jane Austen historians and scholars, they say that it was inspired by a certain hall in the UK, the Kellage
Right.
Hall, because Kellage Hall doesn't exist. Like lots of things that
Ah,
Jane
yeah,
would write about, big houses and all of these things, they were just made up,
yeah,
fictitious towns and villages and stuff. But of where she lived and the contacts that she had, uh,
Mm.
a lot of scholars agree that it must be this particular hole. So I looked
Yeah.
up images of this hole and I thought like, okay, if this is what she was thinking about, then I'm gonna make something that looks like that hole.
Yeah,
It's not exactly like it, so that's my interpretation of what Kellage Hole
I love it. I think it's
would
very
look like.
pretty.
So yeah, that was a fun stitch that I made earlier this year to commemorate that one. But yeah, and of course I do historical stuff. I have just finished this little one.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, we all love that one. Love
this
it.
is this has been such fun to stitch this one up, and I really like. I picked different colors because I wanted to make my own colors, and yeah, I just don't know who she was, HS, and I know that she stitched it in 1850, and she was most likely from the north because of those fun little circular stitches that you see here.
Ah, right.
Those back stitches, they're very typical of Frisian samplers. So,
Ah,
but
so this is a
also,
full reproduction, is this
yeah,
one, or is it your interpretation of it,
no,
something?
this is a really true a reproduction of the original sampler, and she was a really neat stitcher. So I didn't need to
Very
shift
pretty.
things around or do things or make things up to sort of, fill in lost stitches or anything. This is as how she stitched it, but she used, I think, 9 or 10 colors. Can't remember, but I've
Right.
charted it for the original colors, but people are
Right.
free to stitch it however they want. So,
Yeah.
for instance, instead of using 3 different colors of red, 3 or 4 colors red, I used one. I used a pink.
Right.
And there's on the original chart there is 2 colors of green, and I just used 1 color green. And then
Right.
there was a shade of pink and a very odd mint green that she used,
Oh,
which both I didn't really want to use those shades, and I just used a white stitch, so you get that sort of nice light
yeah, I
on
like
something
that. I
dark.
like that.
So I enjoyed it. So you can stitch it with 3 colors. You can stitch it fully monochrome as well if you want to do that. Or you can use 10 colors and get it as close to what she did
Yeah.
as you like. But that's something that I really like.
I love
So
how
yeah,
easy you are with that because I'm making one reproduction from the Vrijmarborg. I don't know if you know the Vrijmarborg in Groningen.
I've
And it
heard
has
of
a
it.
lot of
Yeah,
colors. And I'm sorry?
is it right up north?
It's in Slochteren, the Vrijmarborg. So
Oh no, that's a different
it's
one. I'm
not right
thinking
up
of.
north. There are three big houses left over in Groningen, and Weimar was beautiful. And it has sort
Yeah.
of a sofa, and one of the armrests is fully stitched. So I'm making a reproduction of that one.
Oh
And it
wow.
has, I think, about 35, 40 colors in it. And it is my first reproduction, so it's difficult. And
Yeah.
sometimes I get a headache trying to pick the right color. And I love how you are just like, well, you can stitch whatever color you want. So I'm going to take some of
Absolutely.
that.
I think people get cramped up when they think about
Yeah,
reproduction samplers because they feel that, and I like, I always said there is no right or wrong doing it. I think you have to stitch it how it makes you feel. If you feel
yeah,
happy with that, then that's absolutely fine. You want to use neon colors for your 1600s reproduction sampler, who's going to stop you? Like if
yeah,
that makes
true.
you like then you should
Yeah,
stitch that. Like just because
yeah,
I don't
agreed.
like something or because I do like something is not what you should be doing. And that's what I think is really fun because I think the girls themselves stitched like that. They would work with what they
Yeah,
had at hand, and
yeah,
they would work with, if they liked something, they would be using it. So I think
yeah,
that's also something that, that joy of just playing with colors, just
yeah,
do that. I have some samplers that the original samplers were worked uh, really with like the threads were nearly the same color as the linen. And sometimes I get a
yeah.
complaint from a stitcher saying like, "Oh, it doesn't show up," and it's like, "Yeah, but it doesn't show up on the original sampler either
No,
because I was literally struggling and making photos, and because I
yeah,
couldn't see the stitches, I had to make photos with certain, putting a
yeah,
lamp on the side so I could see the shadows of the stitching." But
yeah,
yeah, that's kind of what the original sampler is like. But I'm always saying like, if you don't like it, get a shade that's a bit darker or a bit lighter than your linen, so it pops a bit
yeah.
more. But then people feel like, oh yeah, but then it's not true to the original. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't matter
So
if you
you're
like
also
it.
fine with people amending your designs and choosing
Oh
different
God, yeah,
colors, or quite happy.
absolutely. I love that actually when people do that because they make it their own, right? So the thing is, this is like a copyright thing, right? When I sell a pattern to a user, it is their user, but it remains the copyright of me as a designer. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that when they stitch it for themselves, that they cannot alter it in any form. They can do with it
Mm.
whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Even though it says in the copyright like it can't be done, but that is because you have to put that in there so the people
Yeah.
don't start sharing it or selling it on or whatever. It always sounds a bit like, official and threatening, like
Yeah.
uh, mm. But yeah, that the idea of the patterns is that like you can do with it what you want to do. Because
Yeah.
often I put an alphabet with it so people can put their own initials on the sampler.
Yeah.
If you don't like the saying, change the saying. I have some beautiful samplers, but sometimes they have really, really depressing verses on it. It's all about death and fearing God and all of that, like really quite dark and oppressive. Like, death is nearing and be ready. And it's like, oh, wow, that's fun. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. But hey, if you want to do, like a lyric from a pop artist, go for
Why
it.
not?
That's fun as
Yeah.
well. If that makes you
Yeah.
happy, put that on the sampler. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If that has
Yeah.
meaning for you, I mean, I think that that's what you should be doing. I think give it
Yeah.
meaning for what you want to do with it. And I've seen
I
one
agree.
lady as well. She stitched her family's holiday bungalow on it. And she said, like, we would go on holidays in this little house, and it had meaning for me. And the little building that was on your sampler was really nice, but it didn't have a meaning for me.
Didn't
So she
want it.
swapped it around. And then she said, like, I hope you don't mind. And I'm like, no, not at all. I love this so much because
Yeah.
you've given this meaning. You've made this
Yeah.
really special, and you've made this personal. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
I would like to ask you a
Yeah.
few questions about being an entrepreneur whilst also enjoying stitching as a hobby. So, how
Hmm.
does that work for you, and how does that come together for you?
It's a weird one because you have to separate the business side from the fun aspect.
Mm.
And because I really, really love what I do, and like I said earlier as well, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't really love it. Um, there is a temptation to work too much, where
Yeah.
because you love it so much, and it's like, but it is my job as well, so it's fine that
Yeah.
I'm doing this. It's totally okay that I'm sitting here stitching from morning till evening, but you do have to step back, and it's actually really good as well to step back, because usually when you dive in too deep, well, of course, you could get complete burnout from doing what you do,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
also inspiration hits when you actually step back and don't
Yeah.
do anything, because just sitting in front of a computer sometimes trying to design doesn't work.
No.
Going for a walk, I remember one of my teachers in art school, he said to us, he said, like, a lot of people, a lot of artists, they feel really guilty. They feel like, like, I need to make money, so I should, like, work like other people go to a factory or to their day job or whatever they have, and
Yeah.
I can sleep in if I want to, because I could also work until 10 in the evening. So it's like it's up, I make my own hours. And then artists
Yeah.
start feeling really cramped up and stressed because it is their own job. And then they just go to their studio, and then they sit in front of this canvas going like, oh my God, what am I gonna, paintbrush in one
Yeah.
hand, what am I gonna make? He said, like, don't feel guilty about that, because art doesn't work like that. It comes to
No.
you, and inspiration comes to you in a completely different way. He said, like, go for a walk, go to a forest, go to the beach, like, feel the wind in your
Yeah.
hair. And then
Yeah.
suddenly something will happen, and then that thing is there. And that just can be a split second, but
Yeah.
that one split second wouldn't have happened if you just sat in your studio waiting for inspiration to strike. And
Yeah.
of course, it is really good to have work ethic and just do the grind of being there, but you need to step back as well and let that
Mhm.
sort of thing happen. And that's something that I start doing more now. I start going out, just taking the train, go to a city, see things, look at antique
Oh,
shops,
lovely.
do the things that I like. And
Mm.
then it's really weird, nearly every single time when I do that, I come back with so many ideas buzzing in my head, and then I feel really inspired to start working
Yeah.
again. And so that's something that's really, yeah, that's really cool. But for me, the it has never been something that I thought like, oh, now I need to do this thing. Ugh, I really don't want to. I think the only thing sometimes when you're really stressed about deadlines where you have made agreements with people, that you have
Yeah.
to do a certain something, and then you have a deadline where you need to work on this thing, and it's not that you don't enjoy working on this thing, but it is this looming deadline, the stress
Yeah.
of doing that thing, that sometimes
Yeah.
can be one of the things that is not a negative per se, but it is,
Mm.
it sometimes takes
It's a
away
bit
a
more
little bit of
pressure.
the yeah, exactly, it's the pressure
Mm.
side that's
Yeah.
slightly less fun.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's also, sometimes that pressure can actually drive you as well to do the best thing that
True.
you can do.
Yeah.
So it's a weird thing. It works on many sides, I guess. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And so there's more activities, I think, than just designing and stitching, because you also go to retreats, I think, as a
Yeah.
guest. So what kind of activities do I have to think about that makes up your job?
Loads, like you said, I'm really excited about going to a retreat next year, which is hosted by the wonderful Jean Farish from the US. She does a lot of cruise stitch things, and she had asked me to join her on the cruise. And if there's one thing I really dislike, it's boats. I'm
Oh,
not
is
good on
it?
ships at all. I hate being on the water, and like a little boat, like, you know, little lakeside thing or whatever, like that's fine. But a huge cruise ship and then being on the open water, that's literally my worst nightmare. That's just
Oh,
like
it's
I
so
get
fun.
really scared of that idea.
Mhm.
So I said like, I'd love to do something with you, but not on the water. So she said like, well, she's like, we're thinking of once we come back from the fjords in Norway to spend a few extra days in Amsterdam. And she said like, this would be then a retreat where you would be the person running the retreat kind of thing, the workshops and the
Yeah.
presentation. So that's going to be 2 days in Amsterdam. And she said like, people who are on the cruise, they get first dibs for tickets, and after that we open it to everyone else who wants to
Yeah.
do. And that's really exciting because now it's open to everyone. They can get it from Jean Farish's website. I'll send you the link as well so you can
Yeah. Yeah.
do that. But that's something that's open now, which is really exciting. And then next year I'll also be doing a big stitch in the UK again, which is happening, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
This year I'm going to retreat in Ackworth in the famous Quaker school. So that's going to be really fun. I'll be doing a
Yeah.
presentation there as well. Because yeah, one of the things that I do is I collect antique samplers and I do research in them. And then
Yeah.
with the research, you start learning so much stuff about
Yeah.
stitching history, and you start making connections like, could this be something? Could that be something? And then you start
Yeah.
making connections with these things. And that's
Yeah.
how talks develop. And then you get invited to hold these talks like at retreats and stuff. And that's something that's really, really wonderful because it's a weird nearly inchless job. You just sit in your studio all day long clicking, and then I sit on my couch and I do my stitching, and it's just this sad, lonely me show basically. Like it's just me on my own. You know what I mean? It's a really weird thing. And then suddenly you're in a room with hundreds of stitches, and it's like really bizarre. This contrast between being such an
Yeah.
like I'm I'm odd as well because I have a very extroverted side of me and a very introverted side. I have two things in me. I am very happy to go on a stage and hold a talk in front of hundreds of people. I don't mind doing that.
Hmm.
But I'm also someone who is like, I'm very happy to be left alone with just a cup of tea or a cup of coffee
Yeah.
and my stitching and some music in the background. That's
You
it's a
have
very odd thing, isn't it?
I think that's also about balance, isn't it? So you have days
Yeah.
where you want to be on your couch with the cat and nothing else.
Yep.
And then there are days that you want to go out, you want to share your craft with other people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's also really nice and it's important as well when you are like me. I really love being alone, but I also
Mm.
like doing stuff with other people and talking with other craftspeople. So I joined years ago the UK Sampler Guild, which is run by the wonderful Linda Haddon. And she's excellent. She hosts these weekly meetings for sampler enthusiasts, and people basically have not just it's not just samplers, but it is from a huge love of samplers and textile stuff.
Yeah.
And anyone in the world can join. That's the nice thing as well. Like it's quite an
Yeah.
international crowd. We have people from Europe, from the US, Canada, and of course the UK because it's UK based.
Yeah.
And she organizes a lot of things in the UK. So she's the driving force as well behind the Aqua retreat that she's doing. Um, so it's really wonderful to be a part of that community. But what I
Mm.
really love is our weekly Zoom calls that she does. So nearly every week on either Tuesday or Wednesday evening, UK time, there is a Zoom call, and all of the members can just join in, and we just sit and stitch. Everyone puts their cameras on or off if you prefer
I love
that,
that.
and you can just listen to other people, and then someone will go like, well, this week I bought a sampler, and then everyone's like, oh, let's show, what do you think? And then we have
Yeah.
discussions about, like, where do you think it is from? And then people say
Yeah.
like, oh gosh, like, this is really fascinating. And then we have all these
Mm.
discussions going on, and you learn so much from all of these wonderful people that are part
Yeah.
of that. And that's for me
Yeah.
something that's really important as well, to do that,
Yeah.
to have that group of people that you can join, and you don't have to join every week. That's the nice thing as well. I've had
Yeah.
months where I was just too busy and I couldn't join, and then suddenly I joined. It's like, oh hi, I'm still alive, folks. Like, I'm still
Back
here.
again.
And then it's like, like but it's such a wonderful group of people, and
Yeah.
yeah, every weekly meeting is just fantastic. So yeah, if
Yeah.
people haven't joined yet, that I would really recommend joining the Sampler Guild in the UK.
Yeah, I will
It
definitely
is
look
literally
into it as
called the
well.
Sampler Guild as well. So
Yeah.
it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. So your activities are going away a lot, traveling a lot, because all these retreats are elsewhere mostly, because
I
the Netherlands doesn't have that many retreats.
We have a few. There is one that, or one. There's basically two major cross stitch shops in the UK that we have. We have Sudi Day, of course, which is run by the
Yeah.
Simone,
Yeah.
and then in Drenthe, on the border with Groningen,
Yeah.
there is of course the
Rode.
wonderful Handwerkboutique by Annemiek, and they're two wonderful craft shops. But they're pretty much the only craft shops that we still
Yeah.
have in the Netherlands that are
Oh,
dedicated to stitches, and they both organize interesting things.
right.
Annemiek is doing her thing again that I know, which is happening, I believe, fairly soon-ish again, or has already happened. I got an email and I was like so busy last couple of weeks that I've hardly properly sat down to read it. But I've done one with them as well, which was really nice.
Yeah.
But I don't
Yeah.
do that many retreats because it's a lot of work to do a retreat,
Yeah.
because you have
Yeah.
to prepare a talk for it. Like usually when you're
Yeah.
being invited for a retreat, you have to uh, do a talk, and you can't just keep repeating
Yeah.
the same talk again and again, because that's going to be
Oh,
boring as well. So, like, I
yeah.
sometimes do, like, when I have done a talk in the UK, I feel like I'm safe to do the talk in Canada as well.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah. That's
fine,
fair enough.
like it's gonna
Yeah.
not gonna be many people that will have seen both talks.
No.
But yeah, so it is a huge responsibility, because people travel
Mm.
a long way to come
Mm.
and go to a retreat, and they're often quite expensive for people as well. So you want to give
Yeah.
them something really special as well. So I
Yeah.
travel with a
Totally.
lot of samplers, so that it's quite tricky to do retreats, especially
Yeah.
internationally.
Yeah.
So I do a couple every year at the moment. So next year this year I've got the retreat in the UK that I'm going to in Ackworth. And earlier I had one that was organized by Marie Gesner, which was Stitch in London, which was really wonderful.
Yeah.
That was that March or Feb? I can't even remember, but it was earlier this year, which was a
Yeah.
wonderful retreat as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's the only two that I'm doing this year.
Right.
But then I just do online stuff as well. So I do these events with Caroline from Evertote in Canada,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it started just with the holiday countdown thing, but then we are doing the summer thing. So we're doing the Frisian Summer Smalls now, then the holiday
Yeah.
countdown, and then in
Yeah.
February there is the Salentines. Again, a wonderful pun that Hannah came up with, which is really nice. So yeah, there's a lot of these sort of
Yeah.
things, and they take a huge chunk of time because it's not just
Yeah.
that month that you're working. I literally start
Yeah.
more than a year in advance already with the planning. So for next year's holiday countdown, I've already planned the design pretty much. Like, you have to
Really?
get that ready, yeah, because it is just so much
Yeah.
work. So for this year's, for instance, everything was pretty much ready design-wise in November last year.
So don't you find it difficult to not share that and not shout to
Oh,
people, look what I've made?
tremendously, because I get so excited about it, and then I want to share it with people. But the nice
Yeah.
thing is I can share it, of course, with Caroline and with Hannah
Yeah.
and all the folks at Evertote, because Carrie does the dyeing, so she needs to know as well, like
Yeah.
way in advance, like with all the
Yeah.
dyeing that she does.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting that you have at least this little group of, your inner circle that you can share all this stuff with that you can't
Yeah.
yet share. Because right now as well, I'm working with, and that's what I like about Patreon, to come back on that as well. I feel that is more of a smaller, trusted group of
Yeah.
stitchy friends that I share stuff with. Um, and I think there is a mutual understanding as well that the people within the Patreon group also, when I share something, they don't share it with the outside world. So they're not
No.
going to repost pictures that I'm putting up
No.
there. And that's quite exciting because then I can show something like a
Yeah.
wild idea that might not even happen, but I'm sort of thinking of like, what do you think of this? And
Yeah.
then like, yeah, and if there's enough enthusiasm for something, I can then,
Yeah.
like do something or rethink it or retool the
Yeah.
idea. That's
Yeah.
something, yeah, that's very exciting. Yeah.
Well, lovely. And then I have some quick fire questions, if that's okay with
Yeah,
you.
of course. Fire away.
And you can still give me a long answer, but I'm gonna try to keep it focused.
I'll
So
try to keep
what
my
would
answers short.
designing or stitching?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, they go hand in hand for me. I would not be able to yeah. And for me, because I stitch what I design.
Yeah.
But I there is so many amazing designers out there, and I would love to stitch their stuff, but I just don't have the time. So it is
No.
very rare that I stitch a different
Yeah.
designer stuff because I have like stacks of my own stuff that I need to work through.
And to be honest, I think there are plenty of people out there who would be happy to do your modeling stitching for you. So, you
I
know,
know I know I've had offers, but like I really like to do it. But that's the nice thing as well. I think that the model stitching that people do for themselves is it is a my business has literally been word of mouth. I
yeah,
have never really, and this is such like I feel so blessed as well with that, to be honest with you. I've never really had to pay for advertising or doing anything. It has really grown completely organically, and
yeah,
I was super lucky when I started out that this lady in the US who has an influential blog, she wrote something about me, and she just wrote like 2 lines about my stitching, or not even 2 lines. It was just a sort of she had stitched a Christmas stocking, and it had a tiny motive on it, but it was from a pattern by me, a larger pattern, and said like, oh yeah, the
yeah.
motive is taken from this pattern by Modern Folk. That was literally in like a huge blog post with lots of photos and stuff,
Wow.
and that kickstarted my career because she was so influential that people then looked me up and they started buying my pattern, and
Yeah,
from there I have built up Touchwood, a really lovely loyal customer base that are still buying my stuff after
yeah,
that blog post from 15 years ago that people saw. So that's really, really nice. And that's sometimes you just need that little, that
yeah,
jumping off point. But yeah, from there on, I've just always been making my own stuff and stitching my own
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah. Would you reproduce something or design from scratch? So design your own thing.
I think design my own thing. I love reproduction stuff. I really, really enjoy that. But if I had to choose one or the other, I think
Yeah,
my creative vibe would still win,
yeah.
because I could still collect without reproducing them and do my
You could.
research. Like,
And you
yeah,
could also still interpret them and then sort of put them
absolutely.
in your own stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
What is your favorite fabric?
My favorite fabric. Oh gosh. You mean as favorite fabric to stitch on?
to stitch on? Yeah.
Oh, that would be Zweigart fabrics. I just love them. I really, really like working with them. Now, I love the ones that Carrie dyes at Evertoad. She makes really beautiful colors.
Yeah.
There is why can't I think of the name now? My I'm really really terrible. One of my friends in the US and she has an amazing dye company as well, and I can't think of her company now. Cedar
Does you see the
Cedar
river?
River
That's something.
Linen. Cedar
Yeah,
River
that is
Linen.
something.
That's the
Yeah.
name. Yes.
Well, there
Oh,
you go.
I'm really glad I remember the name because I'm rubbish with name. She does beautiful colors as well, like really really nice.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful company as well. But nearly all of those companies use Zweigart linen as their base material.
Yeah.
And there's a reason. I've been to Zweigart as well, the factory. I've had a tour there, which is really fascinating, and their
Mm.
quality is just really, really good, and it's
Yeah.
really nice. I love that when you wash it as well, it becomes really soft. You can sort of just,
Yeah.
you get it off the bolt and it's a bit stiffer.
Yeah.
But then when you give it a good wash, it becomes nice and soft as well. And I like to stitch in hand, so a soft fabric for me is really pleasant as well to sew my stitches on. Uh, so
It's
yeah,
interesting
but
because I also stitch from hand and I like it slightly stiffer.
that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I
And but
do
I
because
dye my
then
own
it
linens as
holds
well,
better.
so they get washed. So for instance, this one I'm working on
Right.
this one, which is uh, I can't even think of which one. It's one of my Quaker designs, but I dye lots of my own linen with tea, black
Oh,
tea,
right.
because it's
Yeah.
yeah, nearly all of the pieces that I showed they're my own linen basically, but it's Zweigart base. Uh, this one was a piece of pure white linen from India, and this is the AKGIT 1833 pattern,
I love that color.
and that's a Vierlande.
Yeah.
And what's really cool about this one as well is that it's 60 by 50 something count. So it's a very high thread count. It's very small.
Yeah.
And I really need to continue working on this one because she's a beast. But I've gone past the 50% mark when I was marking it up. Uh, but I've just been so busy with other stuff. But this is just linen from a clothing shop that I liked, and then I dyed it
Oh,
myself.
really?
So you can
It's
stitch on anything really. That's the fun thing as well. Like,
yeah.
so
It's
that's why
beautiful and the pattern is stunning, but it will take forever and a day to stitch that.
it's. But you can also just use one motif and make a like a pincushion out
Yeah.
of this. That's
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
exciting
that's
thing.
very
You can
pretty.
just take these little motifs and just make
Yeah.
smalls. So, but this is an amazing. I was so happy because this is one of the most beautiful antique samplers that I have as well. The original model. Uh,
Ah,
they're rarer than hen's teeth, really. Vierlande samplers. You hardly ever see them. They're all in museum
right.
collections or in
Yeah.
yeah, important sort of sampler collections. And I got a chance to buy this from Martin X, an antique dealer in Amsterdam. And I snapped it up when I got the email. I was like, "Yes, please keep that for me. I'll have that, please."
I'll take it.
That was
But so
that
do
was
you have
very
all your
exciting.
samplers that you bought? Do you have them hanging around or do
No,
you have them stored
no.
away?
I have hundreds of samplers. I would need to buy several houses if I wanted to hang
Really?
all of them. But usually when I get samplers, because most samplers have been reframed in the 20th century, and a lot of them have been done in a really bad way, glued onto cardboard or
Ah,
whatever. So the first thing I do is take them off the backing because it literally
yeah.
destroys the samplers, and then I store them in drawers. I have like these architectural sort of blueprint
Yeah.
drawers that I have, and they're
Yeah.
stacked. I need to buy a new one because this one is full that I have, which is but yeah,
What you
I
really
have
need to
some hanging behind me, so you can't see it, but behind me there's a wall that I have a bunch of samplers on. And this room where I'm sitting it's there is daylight in it, but there is no direct light, so it doesn't
ah,
fade. It's
yeah.
very, very filtered daylight that comes into this room, so it's
Yeah.
pretty much always sort of twilight in this room, so it doesn't bleach my samplers. But yeah, so I do keep them. I have some of them, like this one was a one that I
Oh
charted a
yeah.
while ago. Um,
Yeah. Cute.
she's a girl from Utrecht, which I was really
Ah,
excited about. And Yeah, I've got loads of samplers standing around me on the floor. I have so many here. This is a really old one from Holland, and it has a mermaid, which is
Oh,
really
wow.
quite rare. And
Wow.
I haven't taken that off. This one needs to still come from the backing. So this one is from Amsterdam. It has
Beautiful.
the emblem here, but
Yeah.
you can maybe if I bring it close to the camera, you can see the creepy mermaid on it.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just get the glare away.
I can see it. Yeah.
And that's quite rare to have that on a sampler, which is quite exciting. But yeah, that's I think I have one or two samplers that have a mermaid or a sea monster-ish thing.
Yeah.
One of them is really faded, so I'm not sure if it's a mermaid or a sea monster.
Right.
And that's really cool as well. But yeah, really want to shard that one in at one point.
So would you like to start a museum one day? Because I would visit.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I would love to have a museum with the samplers because samplers are hardly ever seen in museums. And I've spoken to several museum professionals as well, and I've asked them as well, like, why are you not putting the samplers on? Because
Mm.
there's such fascinating women's history.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of museums, they either don't have the expertise or they are fearful of the object because it needs to be kept in certain conditions, and usually they're quite
Yeah.
fragile in the conditions that they
Yeah.
have, that they're not so scared to put paintings on the wall because that's much easier to display and much safer with the oils and stuff.
Yeah.
And they feel probably that it doesn't appeal to too many people, so they keep them in depots. So there's literally like millions of these samplers in the Dutch
Uh,
museums are just sitting in depots, and no one ever
such a
sees them,
shame.
which is really sad.
Yeah.
But I would love to have a museum, but the problem is just the massive overheads of running a museum. It's
Yeah.
so expensive because you would need to rent a
Yeah.
place because I couldn't do it from our house. That would just not be an option. Um, and I wouldn't like to have it in the house either because then you have constantly
No.
people in your own private space, which I don't like.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's tricky. I'd love to be able to do something with a museum or like lend them out to a museum collection, for
Yeah.
instance. I would be very happy doing that if they had like something on permanent, loan where they could display
Yeah.
them. And I really think that people should see them. I think it's a shame that they're just sitting in
Yeah.
my collection.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
look after them and they're kept safe and everything.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
that's what I like about retreats as well, because then I can bring some samples with me and then
Mhm.
people can see them up close, which is for
Yeah.
a lot of people the first time that they see some really antique ones, from 1600s or whatever,
Yeah.
which
And
is
I guess this
exciting.
is just a shout out to everyone in the Netherlands. If they ever have an idea for a museum or a museum that
Yes,
would want to work with you, they should point them to you.
absolutely. If they have a secure space where samplers could
Yeah.
hang, and yeah, I would love to lend them out. That would be very exciting to do something. Yeah.
I know that one of the houses in Groningen, Verhildersum, they have had
Yeah,
you must know about it. Yeah. So
they
they've
had a
done it
really good
once.
exhibition. Sadly, I didn't see
Mm.
it because we came to Rotterdam 5 years ago, which was literally during the period of COVID and lockdowns and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it was around that time or just before that the big Verhildersum
Yeah.
exhibition happened. I think it was maybe 19 or 18 or something like that.
It
Um,
might be. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm in touch with a gentleman who did tons of research for that exhibition, and he's still doing lots of research for the
Right.
exhibition. And he's done amazing a map of Groningen and linked all
Yeah.
the samplers to people,
Yeah.
which is just wonderful research and
Yeah.
gives really good insights as well. Because I managed to find samplers from my own collection uh, that were like, okay, you can really see that this girl is from this village because
Oh,
the
yeah.
sampler that I have is nearly identical to the sampler stitched 2 years after or before this other girl
Oh,
did in
that's
this
lovely.
village. So that's
Yeah.
that's really exciting
That's
when you see,
lovely.
those connections. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. Okay, back to my quick fire questions. Which design are you the most proud of?
Ooh, that's such a difficult question. Well, No, it's not actually. I think it would have been the 20, I forgot which year it was, 21, I think. The Fruits of Plenty, the stitch
Mm,
along that year,
yeah,
because that was the pattern where the stitch alongs that I had done before them had been already great fun and had been joined by a lot of people, but that one was mental. That was stitched literally by so many people from so
yeah,
many different, I think it was about 70 different countries worldwide that were participating in that one, which was
yeah,
just absolutely just,
yeah.
and people are still buying it and still stitching it. And it was wonderful because it was, what's his name now? See, I'm rubbish with names, and I consider him a friend as well in the US. Um, Wonderful Flosstube. Hasn't been doing Flosstubes for a long time now. But he started the Still Fresh Fruit Sal because he stitched it a year later, which I just love. And then he sort of launched that, and then lots of people joined him again. And
Yeah,
that has been such a wonderful exercise because for me, why I'm proud of that particular one, because it became like a genuine community spirit thing where all these
yeah,
people were working on this thing. And that was such a wonderful thing. And that was the first time that a Sal really captured that spirit of
yeah,
being a Sal of mine, that is.
yeah,
I know
yeah,
many Sals have done this by other designers, but for me, that was
yeah,
a really cool experience to do something that was captured by so many people.
yeah.
And luckily, lots of people have joined on subsequent Sals again, which is really, really exciting. So, yeah,
And it's a beautiful pattern. It's
thank
stunning.
you. Thank you.
Let's see, we've covered a few as well. Um, you've already said that you don't stitch somebody else's design, so I can cross that one. Do you have a tip for anyone who's watching? Maybe someone for stitching, but also maybe for someone who's thinking about designing.
I think just do what makes you happy and stitch what makes you happy. I think that is literally the most important thing. And I think also don't feel pressure about working on certain materials. Like, if you want to work on 12 count Ada, never let anyone sort of shame you and say like, well, I only stitch on 46 count linen or 56
Oh
count
yeah,
linen, because that's awesome as well. Like, there is nothing, and I know friends of mine who literally stitch over one on 56 and they would never shame anyone. But I know that there is sometimes a culture of like, oh, this is like, now you've graduated to proper stitching. But the thing is,
yeah,
like, there is no such thing as proper stitching. You can literally work on 10 count Ada and make the most beautiful things. Like, work
agreed.
with chunky wool, make a thing that's literally like as big as a house. It's cross stitch still and it's beautiful. So like,
Yeah,
why, like, I think just be proud of that, and don't feel like that is a limitation. Even if you have perfect sight and you can work on the smallest thing, if you enjoy working on chunky stitching, that's fine. Like, if that gives you joy, I think that's the most important thing. So I think, don't feel pressure to work on smaller things than you feel comfortable working on,
mm,
and just stitch what makes you happy with the colors that make you happy. So
yeah,
I can be super boring and always recommend my favorite red, which is Falu red, which I literally have. I've just
beautiful.
ordered another big hank because
Yeah.
this one is getting really thin. I get the huge hanks from
Oh wow.
Emmetode. So yeah, it's on the way, and I'm really eagerly waiting. I had hoped that it
Yeah.
would be here today, but or yesterday, but it's still
Oh,
lost in transit somewhere. Um, but yeah, if you want to use neon pink,
do that.
do that. Work with the
Yeah,
stuff that you like, stitch what you
yeah.
like, and abandon stuff that you don't enjoy. I think that's really important as well. I hear sometimes floss tubers
Hmm.
saying like, "Oh yeah, I have to put some stitches in on this thing, and I'm
Mm,
really not enjoying it." It's like, why would you stitch that then? Don't. Like, sometimes I have had a pattern as well where I needed to finish something and I was like really eager to work on the next thing, but I was still enjoying stitching on
yeah.
the thing that I needed to finish. But I would never stitch on something that I wouldn't enjoy. Then it immediately
No,
like, okay, this is not enjoyable,
put
abandon.
it away. And I had a chat with Kim as well. She was my second guest, and she said a lot of borders, I don't stitch them. I stitch the part of a pattern that I enjoy, and
Yeah,
the rest I just leave out. And I thought that is a
exactly.
very liberating idea.
Yep. Yeah, I have some friends of mine that do that, and they always say like, Jacob, love the border that you designed, but it is literally
Yeah,
60% of the pattern, and I don't have the time to do that whole thing. But I really like that bit in the middle. I said like, go for it.
yeah, yeah. That's
So one of my
lovely.
friends is she's working on the this one here, the Elephant and Castle one. Uh,
Ah, yeah,
but again, this border is about, I think it's nearly 60% of the whole thing.
yeah.
So
It is a
that's
pretty
quite
border though. It's very
it,
pretty.
thank you, but it is a lot of stitching, and if you don't
Mm,
like doing borders, then why would you? You know,
don't
why
do it.
why
Yeah,
torture yourself?
agreed.
Just pick the stuff that you like, and like use elements. Like if you like little things from a sampler like that, like a Quaker style
Yeah,
sampler, you don't have to stitch the whole thing. You can just use a
no,
few elements and make some pin cushions out of it.
yeah.
You know, that's
Just do what you want and abandon
yeah,
what you don't want to do. I love that.
absolutely.
Thank you very much for a very lengthy chat, but I've had a great time.
Thank you, Hanneke. I hope I haven't been yapping too much.
No, no, it's been interesting. You know so many things, and you're very much about your craft, and I think that's beautiful. So
Oh,
thank you
thank you.
very much for sharing all your knowledge and all the interesting things you had to mention and say. It's absolutely lovely. So is
Oh,
there
thank
anything
you.
you would like to say as a finishing note?
Uh, Gosh, well, thank you so much for having me, first of all, of course. It was really lovely chatting with you, so I really enjoyed
Thank
that as
you.
well. But yeah, if folks want to find out more, I guess they have a drop down with some link stuff in your video, right? So they can find out more
Yeah.
stuff. And so yeah, I think the stuff that we discussed, they can find links to that stuff if they want to find out more. Yeah,
I will put the links and I will definitely put a link into your Patreon because people might be interested in that. Um, so yeah, if anyone wants to find anything, they can always go to my description boxes and everything is
brilliant,
there. So
awesome.
let me just address the viewers. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have
Thank
any
you.
more questions for Jacob, then please leave it in the comment boxes. And Jacob, I'm sure you will go through them at some point. And
Absolutely.
otherwise, I will collect the questions and send them via email to you at some
I
point.
was going to say, and they can also send an email just from my website. I'm more than happy
Right.
if they don't want to put it in the thing. But it's always nice when
Yeah,
people put things on the video as well. It's really good for viewership as well to keep it up. So
it it is, but people
just
are welcome to also use your email. So,
exactly
and
that.
that's absolutely fine. So, thank you everyone for watching, and hopefully see you next time for my sixth guest, which I have just lined up. So next week I will be interviewing someone else. Thank you very much
Awesome.
for watching.